Welcome to the Botanical Night. This is the night of the March 7th. So I would speak about Monocots today. Monocots is a big lineage of flowering plants which likely started from ancestors similar to Acorus, so kind of wetland plants. And evolution of Monocots went in many ways together with adaptation to the wetlands. So for example, monocots have rhizomes, branching rhizomes, which allow them to colonize wet environments. They also have very fibrous content of the whole plants, which allow them to not rot even after some parts of plant are dead. They still continue to support the whole plant. But in this way, monocots made kind of small mistake, or actually the grave mistake. They completely lost the ability to secondary thicken their stems. So secondary thickening is a giant achievement of seed plants. Actually, it was one of the main drivers of seed plant evolution, because secondary thickening allowed them to produce trees, and big trees, they demand some very stable, straightforward life cycle. So they made seed in that reason. But some groups of flowering plants start to lost the secondary thickening, and most notable example are monocots. So monocots which adapted to grow in the wetlands, smaller plants, do not feel anything bad about absence of secondary thickening. But sooner or later, monocots wanted to grow tall. And here is a big problem. So growing tall means they will accept more light. And this is very important for the plant, as you understand. But growing tall also means that the crown of the plant will be very heavy, and the stem, herbaceous stem, or stem even rich of fibers but without secondary thickening, had lots of troubles to support this big and actually always increasing crown of leaves. So monocot went three different ways. First way is, I would call it, column of fiber. This is a palm way. So palms, they actually made the stem out of fiber. They also use the basement of leaves, because in monocots, leaves are frequently very broad. They cover like almost the whole circle of the stem. So they use fibrous stem, they use fibrous leaves, and in addition, they also develop some kind of additional roots in the basement of stem. So all the things together allow palms to stay vertical and support the crown of leaves. They don't have any secondary thickening, but these things are more or less enough. There is also bamboo way, which I call silicon pipe. So kind of pipe, empty stems of grasses, evolved in a way to accumulate as much silica as possible, start to grow very fast. So underground rhizomes of bamboo support the extremely fast growth of stem. So stem of bamboo growing and do not produce any leaves, any photosynthetic leaves, until it will finish the growth. And then secondary branches will appear, which will make photosynthesis. So this is a silicon pipe way of making tree. And there is a third, most crazy way, which is represented with some different monocots. Anomalous secondary thickening. So what is anomalous secondary thickening? There is a law of evolution is irreversible, Dolus law, and you cannot make this initial very straightforward circle secondary thickening back again, unfortunately. So plants with anomalous secondary thickening, they use multiple I would say stem cells to make their stem thicken. So stem cells is a bit of a joke, because cells are located within the stem, and also this is an actual animal term, zoological term. In plants, almost every cell is a stem cell in a way that can produce some new cells. So in botany, we typically call them not a stem, but meristematic cells. So within a stem of these plants are many cells which still able to produce new cells. So these cells start to make secondary tissues. And to make this anomalous growth more or less even, there should be very many cells on the whole periphery of stem. One of interesting consequence of using meristematic cells, many meristematic cells randomly arranged within a stem, is that the amount of that anomalous thickening depends on the diameter of stem. So you can think what will happen, right? Okay, so if you look down, you will see that the more down we come, thicker will be stems. It kind of has a kind of pyramid shape, because with the increasing of diameter of stem, the more and more and more cells will be involved in the secondary thickening, kind of exponential thickening of the stem. It's not very big deal. They frequently look like these pyramidal trees, but I think they're even more stable in that way. For example, there is a Bucharnia plants. They looks like a kind of giant onions because of that exponential thickening of the stem. So Cordylinus, Bucharnius, Desilerians, Eucus, and many other plants of Monocots, they kind of invent or reinvent the secondary thickening, reinvent the wheel of secondary thickening in that interesting anomalous way. Actually, anomalous secondary thickening is not unique to Monocots. Some so-called dicots also have this anomalous secondary thickening. Example is, for example, bougainvillea, one of vines which has that way of thickening. And actually many plants from Phytolacca, so for example Phytolacca's herbaceous plant has this anomalous way of secondary thickening, and also Phytolacca trees, Phytolacca dioica or ambu tree, also has this kind of exponentially increasing stem towards the ground. And famous cultivated hypocotyls, hypocotyls of turnip, of beet, and famous Japanese daikon also have anomalous thickening. So that was kind of advantage, because hypocotyl can now increase and increase very easily. One question is left. Why tree ferns did not invent that way, kind of random meristematic cells of secondary thickening? It's unclear. But one of the reasons I think it's because their vascular system is completely non-similar to the vascular system of seed plants. So vascular system of ferns contain multiple kind of very flat-ish, so belt-like vascular tissue. So they are not symmetrically round. They don't form any kind of radial symmetry. And that will make the actual thickening of stem very complicated. Controlling of that stem will be almost impossible. So this is a story about anomalous secondary thickening, the way how Monocots reinvented the lost secondary thickening. And this is a campus of a Kyoto University. It's a night of March 7th. Thank you.